Answered in kind. 31. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Dedicated to and inspired by Hypno. There exists a subtle and pervasive condition, so normalized it rarely names itself, so ubiquitous it mistakes itself for maturity, for realism, for adulthood. It is not death, yet neither is it life. It is a liminal habitation, a living limbo, where one moves, speaks, achieves, and even celebrates, yet remains curiously untouched by one's own existence. Color drains from experience. Even moments labeled exciting arrive desaturated, dulled, unreal, as though witnessed through thick glass. This is not the absence of events. It is the absence of inhabitation. The root of this condition lies not in malice, but in fear. Fear trained, inherited, rewarded. When the psyche is educated to orient itself around external validation, when looking right, sounding right, behaving right becomes the price of belonging, a constant hypervigilance takes hold. The self becomes a monitored object. Surveillance replaces presence. Performance supplants participation. One learns, early and thoroughly, to live as a facade. And facades, though efficient, are inhospitable places to live. In such a state, the nervous system is perpetually braced. Attention is outward, scanning for cues, for approval, for danger. The inner life is neglected, not by accident, but by design. Depth becomes unfamiliar, even threatening. The crowd offers safety. Deviation feels like annihilation. Thus, when another appears, unguarded, unpolished, unapologetically themselves, it provokes a deep internal shiver. Not because something is wrong with them, but because something long buried has been stirred. Here begins the phenomenon, so often mislabeled as cruelty, yet more precisely understood as projection. The psyche's involuntary confession. Projection is not merely displacement, it is testimony. What is ridiculed, corrected, sneered at, or shamed in another invariably marks the site of one's own unresolved imprisonment. The mind, unable or unwilling to face its inner ache directly, externalizes it. The accusation becomes a revelation, the mockery a map. Thus, projection always speaks the same unadorned truth, though it shouts it in disguise. I am suffering where you are free. This is why the compulsion to comment on appearance, to fix teeth, hair, posture, gait, dress, is so charged. These are not aesthetic critiques. They are defensive maneuvers. The unexamined self writhes against the reflection of its own insecurity. It seeks relief. It seeks discharge. And for a moment, it finds it. There is a false victory in lashing out, a brief chemical triumph, a fleeting restoration of imagined hierarchy. The ache quiets. The tension dissolves. Control seems reclaimed. Yet, this victory is always counterfeit. The triumph fades swiftly, and the shadows return, unchanged, unintegrated, now reinforced. Because the source of the pain was never external, it cannot be resolved externally. Unmet, unowned turmoil does not dissipate, it ferments. Over time, this feedback loop intensifies. Each act of diminishment requires a stronger dose to achieve the same anesthetic effect. What began as reflex becomes strategy. What was once unintentional may harden into intent. When another reflects back one's insecurity, especially without flinching, the wound is exposed. Anger follows, then fervor, then the impulse to cut harder, to reassert dominance, to obliterate the mirror. And yet, nothing is resolved. This is the great tragedy of facade living. It consumes enormous energy while producing no nourishment. One can be surrounded by people and feel dreadfully alone. One can be praised and feel hollow. One can succeed and feel unreal. The self, never having been permitted to exist, withers quietly beneath the costume. To never be seen past the flesh is costly. It erodes the very sense of being. A person absorbs the ideals of the world wholesale. Ideas of aging as diminishment, of worth as productivity, of striving toward ends that do not serve, and continues nonetheless, because the surrounding chorus insists they must, and thus the chorus drones. You must, you must, you must. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, they melt themselves away. The fixation on appearance, then, is not so much a failure of sight as a misdirection of it. A fear of depth, particularly if one has never been shown that depth within themselves. Depth requires presence. Presence requires courage. Courage requires the willingness to be seen, not as curated artifact, but as living being. And here we arrive at the quiet revolution, the refusal to participate in the economy of mockery. There are those who, when projected upon, do not absorb the poison. They do not recoil. They do not retaliate. They do not internalize. Instead, they transmute, or simply let it fall harmlessly to the ground, like spent matter returning to soil. Fertilizer. Nothing wasted. Nothing nothing clung to. This non-cooperation short-circuits the entire mechanism. Those who attempt to diminish expect injury, shame, collapse. When met instead with joy, unaffected, genuine, luminous, they encounter a wall. Not a wall of defense, but a wall of clarity. There is no echo, no victory, no confirmation. The interaction fails to deliver its narcotic. Disoriented, they withdraw, often silently, because something has been revealed that cannot be undone. This is not superiority, it is sovereignty. To live impassively is not to be numb, but to be ungovernable by fear. To be unmoved by insult is not indifference, but freedom beyond offense. To be unaffected by praise, except where it signals true recognition, is not arrogance, but discernment. The deepest compliment is not admiration of form, but acknowledgement of essence. Another seeing through the flesh to the spirit beneath, a genuine point of contact. This is what it means to be alive. Life, in its fullest sense, is not a performance to be evaluated, but an experience to be inhabited. It is color returned to sensation. It is participation without armor. It is the quiet joy of alignment, of being as one is, without apology, without concealment. Vulnerability is not weakness, but an invitation to be met as you truly are. The invitation, then, is not condemnation, but remembrance. The condition we have traced persists because it works, just well enough to prevent the necessary reckoning. But the only true relief comes from an act of will, the willingness to turn inward, to surface the turmoil without adornment, to allow the self to be seen by itself. This requires courage more radical than rebellion. It requires presence without facade. When did seeing become synonymous with judging rather than witnessing? Perhaps when we forgot how to witness ourselves. And yet, the path remains open. Limbo implies reversibility. Grayness is not final. The corridors of neglect and ignorance are not sealed. They are merely unlit. And light, once welcomed, does not argue. It illuminates. So let us illuminate, not with contempt, but with comprehension, not with shame, but with love. Let us see past the flesh, past the performance, past the inherited scripts, and speak to the being beneath. Let us remember that projection is confession, that cruelty is unmet grief, that facade living is survivorship mistaken for life. And let us welcome, warmly, patiently, without demand, any who are ready to step out of the unreal and into themselves. You are not late. You are not broken. You are not alone. Come as you are. You have nothing to hide here. The light never left, and neither did you. But maybe just looking out dirty windows at life that no one ever taught you to clean. Praise love and pass the compassion. The light speaks once and forever.